Good evening and welcome to an Oak Harbor City Council meeting. It is the evening of November 3rd. It is 6 p.m. It is a Wednesday and we normally meet on the first Tuesday, but not when it is an election year. We have our meeting that month then on a Wednesday, so it's Wednesday, November 3rd. Welcome today. We are meeting this evening. I already went through all of that. I'd like to invite you to stand and join us in an invocation led tonight by Pastor David Parker with the First United Methodist Church, and immediately following that, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor and fellow citizens. If you feel so inclined, please join me in prayer. Gracious Lord, as we gather here tonight, we pause to recognize these truths. The importance of togetherness in our civic life here in Oak Harbor, the privilege of our representative democratic government, the gift of dedicated and loyal servants at every level and sector of our island community, and the sometimes perilous and painful dynamics that can arise in any human system with authorized powers and authority, but also our renewing need to move forward together as we express gratitude for the past and hope for our future. So as this council readies itself in the days ahead to recognize returning members and to welcome 3 new members-elect, may graciousness, respect, may collaboration, transparency, and excitement, may unity, progress, trust, and goodwill be experienced by all. May our city's season of internal strife and struggle be turned into a deeply settled certainty held by all, that we have done the hard work to turn the corner and begin a new day of unified hope and restored morale. And so we draw tonight upon the famous prayer and words of Harry Emerson Fosdick, who once prayed, "Grant us wisdom, grant us courage for the facing of this hour. Bless these civil servants before us tonight, O God, and give them your wisdom and also your strength and peace. I ask these blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen."
Thank you, Pastor Parker. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Due to COVID-19, this will be both a physical meeting location and a virtual meeting per Washington Proclamation 20-28. Due to Governor Inslee's most recent order, masks are required for everyone in council chambers, regardless of vaccination status. City staff are participating via teleconference. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused from the Ring Central meeting at the conclusion of the agenda item. Tonight's meeting may be viewed live via YouTube and on Channel 10 HD 1090. And for this evening, then, I'd like to ask our City Clerk, Julie, to please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor Severns. Mayor Pro Tem Buns.
Present.
Councilmember Servadius.
Present.
Councilmember Mack.
Present.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Present.
Councilmember Goebel.
Present.
Mayor, Councilmembers Heisen and Wassinger have indicated they will be absent and request to be excused.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to excuse Council. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Munz.
I move that Councilman Heisen and Councilman Wassinger be excused for this evening. Second.
Okay, we've got a motion second to excuse Councilors Heisen and Wassinger. Mayor Pro Tem's motion, and the second was Councilor Goebel. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Thank you. And that would include Mr. Wiesner, it looks like. Yes, good. Okay. It's unanimous. So we will start then with our approval of agenda. Are there any suggested items to change? And if none, the agenda will be approved as presented. Okay, there's no amendment. We'll move on then to our second item, which tonight, under presentations, honors, and recognitions, we have a special proclamation, and this evening we're going to ask our Mayor Pro Tem to please read the proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm honored. This has a special meaning in my heart for this. Chief Merrill, would you represent the first responders and stuff this evening by standing and, in a sense, accepting this? I know that your unit will be part of the ceremony on Saturday, or not Saturday, Thursday.
Thursday, the 11th.
Thursday, with the flag and the band and everything at the high school stadium. But I think it's fitting. It's usually when we have a proclamation, we always have someone accept it, and I would be honored if you would do this on behalf.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you. Whereas, as we celebrate Veterans Day, we do so in honor of the brave men and women who have served in our armed forces, who defend our nation with courage, dedication to duty, and love of country. For decades, our veterans have fought for the security of our country and the peace of the world, defending our founding ideals, protecting the innocent, all the while experiencing the hardship, fears, and tragic losses in time of war and peace. And through the years, our veterans have returned home from the discharge of their duties to become active, responsible citizens in their communities, further contributing to the development and growth of our nation. And with respect for and in recognition of the contributions of our servicemen and women have made it to the cause of peace and freedom around the world, the United States Congress provided that the 11th hour of the 11th month of each year, November 11th, be set aside to honor our veterans. And the peace of our nation was shattered on September 11th, 2001, when terrorists attacked and nearly killed 3,000 people at the World Trade Center towers in New York City, at the United States Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and in the fields of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And many brave people heroically, tirelessly, and courageously participated in extraordinary, difficult, and dangerous rescue and recovery effort, in many cases voluntarily putting their own well-being at risk. And in 2001, the United States Congress designated September 11th of each year as Patriot Day, and in 2009 requested the observance of September 11th as the National Day of Service and Remembrance. 2021 marks the 20th anniversary of the tragic event of September 11th, 2001. Now, therefore, we, Bob Severns, Mayor, and council members at the City of Oak Harbor, whereby proclaim November 11th, 2021 as Veterans Day and honor the September 11th National Day of Service and Remembrance, commemorating the 20th anniversary of September 11th, 2001. We call upon our community to proudly display the flag of the United States and encourage participation in patriot activities and remembrances in our community. Signed this third day of November 2021, Robert Severns, Mayor, and Councilman Millie Goebel, Councilman Erica Wassinger, Councilman Joel Servadius, Councilman Tara Heisen, Councilman Wiesner, and Councilman Jeff Mack, and Beth Munns. Thank you, and please relay that to your staff and others.
I certainly will.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you,
Very
Mayor.
nicely done. Thank you. Okay, we are still on our second section, and we'll move to item C, which is community presentations, and it looks like we have at least a couple of those tonight. First, we'll start with the Whidbey Island Marathon 2021 After Action Report presented by Jared Loranger from Fizz Events. Jared?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you guys letting me be here. I think there's a slide that either will be pulled up or I think you guys have it in front of you. But I wanted to just give a presentation and just kind of an after action report, as you mentioned, on how we did this year. Kind of touch base on some of the changes. As we all know, it's been a tough year and a half, and thankfully we were able to scramble a little at the beginning of the year, and we moved the event back to September in hopes that we would be able to host it this year, and we were. And in my opinion, it was very successful. Obviously, it wasn't the same as what we've seen in the past, but we actually accomplished a lot of good things. I think you guys have the slides in front of you, but I'm going to move to slide 2 here on the presentation. Just tell you a little bit about the demographics we had, same as what I try and do each year. And number one, so the next slide, actually, we'll move to the next slide on this. Registration numbers, we were down this year. As to be expected, we almost had about 1,200 people, which was about 400 less than we've had in the past years. It looks like I missed the 2019 there. That's actually 2021 numbers. And we were down, but compared to a lot of other races, we were much higher than a lot of other races have been that have happened in 2021, thankfully. And I think that's because people were excited to get out and go somewhere to still be able to participate in an event and do it in a safe manner. So we took a lot of steps and a lot of actions to make sure that any participant coming to Whidbey Island and the city of Oak Harbor did it in a safe way. One of the things we did right away was we moved our expo out of the high school and down to Windjammer Park to be outside and have more open air for people to come pick up their packets. We gave people the opportunity to pick up their packets on race day as well to minimize contact and try and make sure that people showed up and were able to participate in a safe way and still have a good time. So a couple of the fun facts that I try and touch on each year. Our average age was again right around 40. We were at 38 this year. We had 150 people participate from out of state, actually, which was still a great number. We had 31 states actually represented, and we represented 4 different countries, which was pretty cool to see in a year where people are worried about getting on planes, people are worried about traveling, people are worried about going out and doing outdoor activities. So it was cool to see so many people still come and participate in an event that they've grown to enjoy and have a good time with. So, and one thing we actually just learned in the LTAC meeting for 2022 actually was that this is one of the 3 events that sells out the hotels each year. And the hotel managers had nothing but good things to say again about this year's race, that we, sold out most of the hotel rooms on island, not only in Oak Harbor, but up and down the island, which was really cool to see. One thing I like to point out here on the 4 pie charts there is the far right one, actually, that, it shows that over 50 or almost 50% of our participants actually come from 50 miles or further. So we get obviously Whidbey Island residents to participate, and they bring their families to do some of the shorter distance races and the kids race. But a lot of people are still coming from out of state, out of country, and over 50 miles, showing that this is definitely still a destination event, showing that we are hitting some of those goals of making this a tourism activity in the off-season events, to try and bring people here outside of that summer window when we see a lot of people come to the island. So it was great to see so many people show up and seem to have a really good time. We still had a band there on stage. We had people hanging out. We had people dancing. We still were able to throw a party and have a good time in a really safe manner this year, which was great to see. My next slide here actually talks about the marketing efforts that we went through this year. And in a down year, one of the goals, knowing we were probably going to be down in participation, was to try and limit the spending that we had in past years spent, to make sure we still came close to either breaking even or making a little bit of a profit for the event, to show that people are still here, but we knew how to tighten down a little bit and still have a good event. So some of the print publications we did to advertise the event was in a few different regional magazines this year. Race Center Northwest is one that hits Idaho, Washington, and Oregon, whereas Adventures Northwest is a much more upper Northwest, based in Bellingham, that hits basically Seattle to the border. One of the things that we noticed this year was one of the reasons we were down participants was because the border was closed. We get a lot of participants that actually come from Vancouver, come from Victoria, make this a weekend trip because it is so close, but yet it is a destination, something they don't get to do. So it's a treat for runners to get to travel somewhere that's not only a fun run, but it's also a gorgeous place to go. And there's plenty of other things to do. So that's one thing that in 2022 will hit hard again, is to go back after that Canadian population, to have them come back down once the borders reopen, which we're excited about. One way to save a little money but still get the advertising was increase our Facebook messaging. So boosting posts and promoting more through Facebook, which is a great advertising platform actually to do. So we upped those. We upped our promotional emails that we sent out through the Fizz events database that goes to 50,000 unique emails that are anywhere from Seattle based to Northwest based to across the country based. And there are people that not only have ran the race before, but have ran other races in the area. So we know they're runners and they're the people we want to target. One other thing that we've done here this year is we also, the Sailor Sea Running Series partnership is a partnership between 4 different marathons here in the Northwest that we try to co-promote each other's races, and they are different times of the year to draw more participation, because once we get a person coming and running, we know that person will come run another race. So we offer discounts to the other races. If you sign up for the Sailor Sea Series, we offer you additional swag. A lot of runners like to run for the medal, and that's one thing we hear all the time. So we added a medal and a shirt for you if you participated in over 3 of the 4 different events. Cool thing this past year was we actually added the Victoria Marathon to making this running series the only international race series in North America. And Victoria, unfortunately, obviously with the border closed, switched to virtual. So did one of our other races, but it made it for a cool thing. So anybody from across the nation could take part in this series by signing up virtually, running their race at home. We'd mail them their swag from our race, but then we'd also mail them the series swag. So we actually saw a few more participants come and do the events in a virtual nature this year, which was a little different and something we haven't done before. And pretty cool to see that people were still doing the event because they've been here in the past, they've enjoyed it, and they like the swag we've done. On the screen here is the medal from the marathon. That's the whale tail actually slides up and down like it's going in and out of the water, which the only difference for every race was we changed the numbers there for your specific race. Different shirts there for each one of the races. And one of the things we hear every year is how our swag is really cool and people really enjoy it. And part of the reason they come back to do the race is not only for the beauty of the course, but also the cool swag that they get, and that's one of the things they look forward to each year. So it was cool to get the feedback again of people who liked it or signed up virtually because they like the swag. My next slide here is just a thank you to the people who helped. One of the things that I touch on, I think, every year is this event would not be possible if we couldn't get volunteers to it. And again, this year in a tough year to get people to either feel safe or come out and do things was we had over 175 volunteers throughout the weekend doing different things as course monitors, working at the expo, passing out packets. They helped at the finish line. And then we had a lot of bodies on course, actually. We had over 120 volunteers at water stations, and I can't thank the Navy enough. They promote this for us to not only help get us runners, but they also help staff a lot of the water stations. In fact, out of the 18 locations, I'd say some sort of Navy group or Navy command staffed probably 14 of those, and they brought their families out, and they brought all the different people that they had in their lives out, and they set it up as a party. And that's one thing we hear from participants all the time is how great the support is on course, because they bring music out, they bring tents out, they bring snacks out for those runners if they're hungry, and they turn it into a little bit of a party, which is cool. And the one thing that Councilmember Severns and I joked about was, I think he thanked me on race day because this was the first day in over 65 days that it rained on Oak Harbor, which seems semi-normal for the marathon. I get great weather one day and rain the next. So Thank you to all the council members and all the Oak Harbor staff members that have supported me and supported this race. This was a tough year, and having the support of the city. One person that I know isn't on this call and has since moved on is Lisa Felix, who has done an amazing job for me every year to make sure I get the contacts I need and connect with the proper people. So I want to make sure that she's recognized. Joel, thank you for coming out and standing with me for 2 hours, starting races with me in the pouring rain, you and your son. And it's cool to always see you guys handing out medals and thanking people for coming and doing the things you guys always do. So thank you for everybody who's helped. One other group, Oak Harbor PD, actually staffs different spots every single year. But this year we ran in some trouble where Washington State Patrol actually backed out of closing the bridge. They didn't have enough staff members, and I called Oak Harbor PD 2 days before, and they sent 3 or 4 bodies up there to help Island County PD close the bridge and make sure that those runners could do something cool that they don't get to do other than this time every single year, and make sure it was done safe. We started on time. We were off the bridge as our contract tells us we have to be 10 minutes before we were supposed to. So thank you to everybody who's helped and everybody who helps every single year to support this race. It is a tourist destination for sure. It's one reason that people come to this island and enjoy coming to this island it's the excuse to get here, and then they're able to spend their weekend doing other things and have some fun and see the different unique things that not only Oak Harbor offers, but the island offers. So again, this year felt like a success. Being able to actually do an event in 2021 was special, and I'm excited to see now that we've returned to Windjammer Park how many more people are going to come and be excited to see that brand new gorgeous park and be able to showcase it and showcase downtown Oak Harbor for what it's becoming each and every year with the changes. Couple things on the 2021 and beyond. I wanted to touch on a few things that went really well. Actually, the return to Windjammer Park was fabulous. It's a gorgeous park, and people were stoked to be able to be there and have cool running paths to finish on, a nice big open area to hang out afterwards and cheer on their friends and family members. The new courses that we designed, they were a little different because we needed to change the distance up a little, and people seem to really enjoy them again this year. And I think it's mainly because it's hard to get a bad view. It's hard to pick a route that doesn't have gorgeous scenery along it. So it makes it pretty easy. Next year, so 2022, a few touch points here. We'll return back to April. Our normal April date, we'll move back to April 24th. So funny thing is, it's been a pretty quick switch as I'm debriefing everybody here about what happened in 2021. I actually opened registration for 2022 a couple days ago, and we're over 175 people registered already, which is awesome, which means people are excited. There's people who are thirsty for runs again and excited to do something, which is cool. One neat thing that happened last year was Lisa warned me, hey, the Makers Market is there every Sunday in September, so they have part of the space, so I need you to work around them. And instead of that, I worked with them to make sure they knew we'd have 1,000+ people there to possibly be walking through their area, which is on the other side by the basketball courts. And because of that communication and conversations we had, I'm hopeful that they might want to come out and set up a pop-up event next year to help showcase a lot of the different small businesses that come to that each weekend for the Oak Harbor local residents. I'd like to showcase them for all these different people who maybe aren't from Oak Harbor and get to see that. So cool thing, we'll have music still, we'll have some of the exhibitors and sponsors that we have, but hopefully we can intertwine those Makers Market pop-ups to help sell some of those different little unique things that are made on Oak Harbor, and that those people come out and sell throughout the fall season at Makers Market. So it's one of my goals to help make this a bigger community event, not only a running event, but to hopefully draw some more of the general public down and check it out and see, hey, this is a pretty cool event. Maybe we can next year enter our kid into the 1K, or maybe I'll do the 5K next year. And then lastly, in 2022, we actually as the Cellular Sea Series are working to add a fifth race to it, one here down in Seattle, actually, that's a half marathon and 5K, to give participants another excuse to keep running throughout the year and just to continue to keep moving and keep doing their physical activities and stay healthy and stay active. So excited about being able to do the event in 2021. I appreciate the support everybody from the city provides each year, and the willingness to help from Public Works to the small businesses to City Council and everybody in Oak Harbor's City Hall there. So thank you. Excited for 2022. And I think that's about all I have. I don't know if there's questions or anything. Happy to answer whatever I can, talk 2021 or 2022. But thank you again for the opportunity, and I'm excited to hopefully make this bigger and better next year.
Thank you, Jared. It's been a great partnership with our city. Thank you. Any questions or input, council? Okay. Again, thank you. We appreciate all your hard work, and especially in a tough year. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So we're still in community events or community presentations, and we have our Oak Harbor Arts Commission with us this evening. A couple of members here, Mary Himes, newest appointee to the commission. Mary?
Hi.
Welcome. Hi.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. And I am presenting tonight a letter to the City Council on behalf of the commission, the Arts Commission, and it actually is falls in line with the rest of the other speakers tonight, the pastor and the young man with the marathon, about the community and about sticking together. So I will read the letter, and this is from the Oak Harbor Arts Commission to the city. First, we would like to thank the community for its support of this commission's continued efforts to promote positive and supportive environments for Oak Harbor. The past few months have shown us that we have so much in common, but need to continue to reach out to each other in positive ways, to accept and understand differing points of view and respect those points. Everyone wants what's best for this community. We have an opportunity to continue to stay vibrant and financially sound in a world that is struggling. We have the opportunity to accept and honor the history of our town while moving forward into the future without sacrificing our uniqueness. Oak Harbor is more than a Navy town. It is a community of hardworking Americans who are proud of their history and have hope for its future. It is a town that is part of the Whidbey Island community that offers an escape for many for a few days out of the year, a destination location. What an honor that is to be able to offer simplicity and cultural depth all in one place. The Angel of Creativity is an honor to the spirit of Oak Harbor, and unfortunately all the facts of the installation of this project and the gifting of the sculpture were not communicated along the way, and some of our community were given the wrong impression that it was replacing our history and even changing it. While nothing could be further from the truth. The council took in full consideration color, placement, and cost when considering accepting the gift of the sculpture, which was a considerable amount of time after removing the windmill, which the city decided to move to cost because of the cost to maintain and rebuild the aging wooden structure. We know that the changes in town seem to have happened all at once. That is part of the problem. Rapid change in our town and seemingly not one thought about the community. While many changes are happening in the private sector, anything to do with the town has always been a process. And that process has been very long in some cases. As we move forward, we would hope that the City Council will continue to make strides in involving the community as a whole in the installations and projects that are being considered and why. The Arts Commission meets once a month, And you can always find those meetings on the Oak Harbor City schedule, and also see the agenda the same as anyone can see for the city council meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary, and I see that you're with another commission member there, Therese Kingsbury. Thank you, Therese. We appreciate that. Any questions or, yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
It's not a question, but thank you, Mary, on behalf of the Art Commission. That was lovely. And I think you hit the nail on the head. We're not trying to replace the windmill. It's a combination of all the people from all walks of life that make up our town, and which makes it great. So thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we are now, I think, to our third section of our agenda, which is citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on subjects of interest not listed on the agenda or items listed on the consent agenda. Citizens may also comment on corresponding agenda items. In this hybrid meeting format, citizens can attend and give comment in person or via the online comment form at www.oakharbor.org/public comment, or email the city clerk at jlindsay@oakharbor.org prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting, or call 360-279-4571 to leave a voicemail to be played during the council meeting. Call to leave a voicemail after 5 p.m. on the Friday preceding the meeting and prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. When leaving a voicemail for public comment, please state your first and last name clearly and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Are there any members of the public present who wish to speak this evening? If so, the clerk will call your name. I don't think we have any on a list, okay. But you still could step forward if you wish. We received 2 new public comments and 1 new employee comment since our last council meeting. These were forwarded to City Council, and I think we have them for display now. Let's do the public comments. Please. Next comment is from an employee as a follow-up to the question on morale. Okay, with that, we will move on then to our consent agenda. Item number 4 on the agenda, and I believe we have 4 items on that. Items A through, or A, B, and C, 3 items. Seeing no questions there, the consent agenda will be approved as presented. And next are the mayor and council comments. So I have been rereading the comments submitted by our staff. Again, I want to thank the many staff members who have and are continuing to participate. I know we asked for a quick response, and I appreciate very much you're doing that, and we are asking you to continue talking to us for sure. All of your comments are valuable and are being taken very seriously. It is clear from your comments that these topics go hand in hand. Here's what we are doing at this point in time. First focus is on comments that were common among many of our staff responses. And in my estimation, the most serious of those were fear, retaliation, and bullying. Those are responses that, even though some were past tense, others did not specify them as past or present, but any behavior that has led to these comments is unacceptable. So we're focusing on trying to meet with our department leaders, in-depth discussion of these issues, asking for their input. Some may be from a lack of communication, speculation, or from incorrect or non-factual communication, something many on our staff noted is prevalent. I'll be asking department leaders to watch for and listen for any comments. While we've had mandatory online training for staff on bullying and other topics, even more online during COVID-19, I'm looking into how we can do all staff training, or at least training in work groups to directly address these responses. The next area of common comments center on workload and compensation. A number of employees reported they felt their work group was understaffed and they were expected to handle additional work as a result for no additional compensation. Others mentioned how some staff were able to work from home during the onset of COVID-19, while others did not have that option due to the type of work they do. Many mentioned they felt undervalued working nearly a year without a COLA because of it being tied to union negotiations. Others commented on how other municipalities who did not stay open as we did provided additional compensation and/or higher COLAs to their employees while we did not. Staff's frustration about this is understandable. I have added a mayor's comment box online to provide staff with a continuing opportunity to make comments anonymously, asking only that they state whether they are an employee. City Administrator Oborn sent an email to all staff advising them of this new communication tool last week. We received one comment since our last meeting, and I think is that the one that just was displayed? Okay. Here's what we're going to do. Meet with department leaders and set clear expectations for regular communications at all levels to ensure clear and factual information is shared with all employees. This includes dispelling any because we've always done it this way, or that's just the way it is, quote unquote, approaches to our work. Working well together as a team requires that everyone receives the same message and, more importantly, understands it. Lack of communication breeds a lack of connection. Address the workload issue. Examine whether we are indeed understaffed and/or whether we need to better prioritize projects and set realistic expectations on the amount of work we can do and time needed to complete it. Share and discuss these results with council. I will also request that council be respectful of staff time. If you intend to meet with a staff member, I hope that you'll include me in the communication. From the comments we received, some staff members felt they have a good relationship, while others felt intimidated, and others mentioned work interruptions or added work stemming from council requests. Bring in an outside facilitator who is experienced in working through these issues with staff, with leadership, and with the council. We are not the only municipality that has had to re-examine how to best communicate, support, and work together as a team. I ask that council work with me to form solutions to the following: compensation for staff during COVID-19, approval of COLAs for all staff members, addressing workload in terms of determining priority projects, evaluating the priority of new projects, and/or adding staff where necessary. I also request that we be mindful and respectful of staff. Anytime a meeting runs more than 2 hours, we will include a 10-minute break for each 2-hour period to allow staff and city council to take breaks. Again, I appreciate all the comments from staff and ask that you consider providing your thoughts, even if you haven't done so already. Please do so. Finally, Veterans Day holiday, city offices will be closed on Thursday, November 11th in observance of Veterans Day. Garbage pickup dates can be found on the city website under news. And at this time, then I'll turn to council for council comments. Councilor Matt.
Thank you, Mayor Severns, for the comments. This wasn't pretty, this whole thing, going through all of the situation with the staff, everybody's comments, everybody's on pins and needles. I'm glad you brought it to the open tonight. We got aired out a little bit. Animosity is no way to get things accomplished. It makes everything go backwards instead of forward. And so with all of this, it's good to hear from everybody. I think a lot of people got a lot of things off their chest. I think it's really important. and it's good to air this out. And again, I appreciate you bringing all this up. And yes, I'm one of those guys that let's move forward. Let's listen to our residents. Let's do what's necessary in the city government and move this great city forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mack. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry I don't have the flyer with me. Tomodachi, which is a celebration of the tsunami, there is a group in town that is going to do a celebration of that anniversary, and I believe it's the weekend right after Veterans Day. And it's a dinner, it's on Goldie Road at the VFW, and they will also have a virtual program of people who survived it and their stories and how much they appreciated our military and also citizens helping them through this time. And then the fundraisers will help go back to Japan to help people there. And I will try to get that out to Sabrina as soon as I get the digital. But it's just a group of citizens that I know. Most happen to be Japanese Americans. And this is something that they want to be sure, like 9/11 and Veterans Day, that people are thanked. The other thing is talking about overworked staff and stuff. Have we done an RFP yet for the attorney, or is that close?
Yes.
Because I know they have a lot of stuff we count on the attorneys to get done. Is there one coming?
It's in the works, yes.
Okay. We've had, I think, 1 month, October 4th through, the 31st of October. How are we doing on funds? How close are we to that 30,000?
Very close.
Okay, so we need a motion sometime soon presented to council so we can add some money to it, because I hate for that to fall off and no one has legal, so.
Anticipated for next meeting on the 16th.
Okay, all right, thank you, appreciate that.
Other, Councilor Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor, and good to see you back in the seat, and welcome back. So that was comment number one. I'd also like to thank the public for, working with us, and getting these comments in. Certainly we have the ability to come in and do it in person. Now we've got the online, which I'm sure we're going to continue after the restrictions are lifted. I think it's a benefit. It's just another way to get the comments in, and I appreciate the citizens in the community taking the time to type those out. And hopefully we're going to get the one comment involving the left turn arrows forwarded to our DOT contact, since the DOT controls that section of the highway there, and make sure those comments get forwarded, please, to the appropriate contact of the DOT. Great information, and thanks for that. And finally, thank you to the employees for continuing to keep the information coming. Again, I hope that is something that we can see continue. It shouldn't be something that we should ever not have to ask for, but I'm going to continue to ask for it, right? And let's keep it at the forefront, and let's keep it coming. If any of you feel as though you need to reach out to me personally, my cell phone number is available at the city website. Feel free to do so. It's put there for a purpose. And, keep it coming, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wiesner. Anyone else for council comments? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we will move on then to our next agenda item, which is item number 6A, ordinance, let me see now, ordinance number 1932, mixed use standards, supporting definitions and land use matrix. And for this evening, we have our Associate Planner Ray Lindenberg to present this, and I guess it's after his presentation that I'll open the public meeting, okay? So Ray, are you with us there?
I am with you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm going to do a presentation here that's hopefully going to bring all of the information that you've digested over the past several months with this project, and definitely give me a holler if you have any questions or concerns with this as I go through it. But I'm going to try and essentially wrap it all up and put it in a nice bow for you to take a look at and hopefully adopt tonight. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start my presentation here. And we'll go through that and have a little discussion, and then we can go from there. I know there are some public comments, so I will leave that for the end. Can everybody see the first slide there for my presentation?
Yes.
I'm going to assume that's a yes. Okay, good. All right, so yes, this is ordinance number 1932 for mixed use standards, the supporting definitions that go along with that, and the land use matrix that is all part of this code amendment. So what we have is essentially a continuation of the work that we started when we did the revisions to the Central Business District ordinance. And a very important note here is that it is not the intent or the result of these code changes to make any changes to what's allowed in different zones through this land use matrix. It is simply a way of presenting the information a little bit more efficiently and easy to read and easy to present to the public and for the staff and everybody who deals with the ordinance on a regular basis. So this is not to change any uses that are allowed in different zone districts as part of the matrix. What we're doing to change land uses has to do with the horizontal mixed use. So those are two kind of separate things that we're working with. This presentation, like I said, has a couple of different kind of aspects to it. So we'll do the horizontal mixed use, we'll talk about the land use matrix, and we'll talk about the definitions that go along with it as well. So we have a new section, 1921, which will be standards for mixed use development. We'll have a new portion of the existing section 1920, which will be the permitted land use matrix by zone district. We'll have some new definitions added to 1908 and some revisions to existing definitions. And then going back to 1920, we'll be removing some redundant sections from that code that will be made redundant essentially by having this new land use matrix. So going right into OHMC 1921, this is our new section, Standards for Mixed Use Developments. This is an all-new standalone ordinance section that describes our mixed use standards. Now, we previously allowed for vertical mixed uses, and I put that in quotes because it's not really defined until we get to these new definitions that I'll talk about a little bit later. And we have new horizontal mixed use. Now, in this section, we will have your typical portions of code, including a purpose statement, permit process language, how we go through the process of permitting mixed-use developments, standards for all mixed-use projects, and then separate standards for horizontal mixed-use versus vertical mixed-use projects. And of course, all of these items are within your packet in the draft ordinance format. It should be attached to the staff report that is in your packet. Now, key points for 1921, the dimensional requirements that are for any kind of development that happens in a mixed-use situation are going to be set by the underlying zone district. And the design regulations and guidelines, the DRG document, will still apply, still guide those aesthetic and physical choices and characteristics that they have with landscaping and architecture, pedestrian amenities and things like that. All of those things remain in place. They don't change by this code. Residential units are still restricted to being south of the Northeast 16th Avenue alignment. We're not going to be encroaching any residential units towards the base at all. Also a very important thing, within our code and within our policies as we've done in the past. In the Central Business District, residential uses will still be restricted to upper floors along Pioneer Way. Like I said, we're not changing anything there. We're not trying to slip through any different kinds of development that might have been considered in the recent past or anything like that. Phased horizontal mixed-use projects will require landscaping to be completed before occupancy of those buildings. So in other words, we want to make sure that if we have a situation where you have a mixed-use commercial and residential project where the residential buildings are completed first and the commercial buildings are contemplated as a phase 2 type situation, that we have all of the landscaping and all the amenities already installed so that we don't have a situation where you have a half-finished project that doesn't have landscaping and essentially becomes an eyesore for the community. Future phases along road right-of-way must be landscaped if not developed immediately. So again, if you have a construction of a phased project or a multi-building project, we're going to require that that landscaping go in along those frontages so that we don't have a weed patch sitting out in front where there's buildings intended to be sometime in the future, because sometimes that future ends up being years away. Designated parking is required for residential units, and that designated parking is either going to be in individual garages or parking lots or somehow numbered or signed so that every residential unit will have residential parking provided for it. That might be a situation where a resident chooses to park, further away in a commercially designated area, and sometimes those things happen, but we want to make sure that those residential units have their assigned parking spaces so we don't have a situation where parking is spilling over onto neighboring parcels, neighboring commercial or residential projects, or into the street where it might not be appropriate. Areas along major streets are required to be set aside for commercial uses to avoid creating a de facto rezone. And what we're looking at there is there's a 100-foot commercial reserve along those major thoroughfares and a 65-foot reserve area along minor streets. And that's going to require that you have that commercial frontage. That's where the commercial project or the commercial businesses are going to want to be anyway, is along the frontage. And so we're setting aside that area so that we don't have a situation where somebody constructs residential units close to the street and then comes to us and says, well, I can't get any commercial tenants in there, so we're just not going to build them. And that will essentially create a de facto rezone where you had a commercial property that's all of a sudden all residential, and we don't want that. We feel like our residential commercial zoning balance is fairly robust right now, but at the same time, we don't want to have a large residential project kind of throw that into question. So we're going to maintain, at least along the frontages, a commercial requirement. And then we have a density bonus provided for horizontal mixed-use projects, and that's up to 30%. It follows along with providing affordable housing in some of our other types of projects, that 30% number. And so what that's doing is it's kind of giving a little bit of incentive to maybe develop some residential uses within our commercial districts, either mixed use or redevelopment of existing commercial areas, and hopefully get a little bit of that concept kicked off and maybe get us some affordable housing, some more units online, and we feel that that's a good way of kind of kickstarting that idea. So moving on to the other major key aspect of this code amendment is the land use matrix. And the reason that we did a land use matrix is because as we've gone through all these code amendments, through the CBD and now going through the RO and some of the C1 and C3 zone districts, we noticed that, number one, we had a lot of different land use categories. We had about 250 land use categories, and a lot of those were repeats or very similar but slightly different wording, or could have easily been recategorized or combined into one. For instance, we had uses that were very specific, like we would have a shoe store, or we would have a bookstore, or we would have things along those lines. So instead of having all of those specific stores, we just categorize them as retail. There's no reason or use for the city to regulate specifically what things are sold inside a retail shop unless they are somehow restricted in other ways, whether it's marijuana or alcohol sales or things like that. So when we went through that process with the Central Business District, we introduced some of the concepts of having a minor retail sales versus a major retail sales, which had to do with the amount of square footage that are in those types of stores. And so we were able to apply some of that concept to some other things. We had the retail services, and we have the workshop, retail workshop. And then we went through and cleaned up and consolidated a bunch of the uses so that we now have a list of about 85 different land use categories, which is much more manageable. And again, to go back to that main point that I brought up very early on in this presentation, is that we are not looking at changing what's allowed in different zone districts. These follow along with what was allowed in the zone districts previously. We have categorized them and made it so that while there are fewer uses, they are still the same uses as was allowed previously. So that was your long list, and the question is, how did this happen? How do we get this huge list? And it's because each zone district had a separate use list. And so when we went through and made a zoning change or a code amendment to one zone district, it could be that we copied the list, or it could be that we created a new list. And so all of a sudden, instead of having similar or the exact same uses, you had similar uses. And so you had a shoe store, or you had a store, shoe, things like that. And they did add up to a whole bunch of different uses. And we wanted to make things easier to understand for the public and make things easier to administer for staff. So when each zone district has that separate use list, they're also divided into 3 categories. You have principal permitted, accessory permitted, and conditional uses. And that further bloated that list. So what we did is we cleaned up the definitions, and we now have permitted uses and conditional uses. So we have that list of uses that is proposed with this revision, and then we formatted it into one place. Instead of having a list for each of our zone districts, we now have it formatted into one place as a land use matrix with those approximately 85 different land use categories. And you will find that again in your packet there as part of OHMC 1920. And like I said, that takes the place of the individual lists. So as part of that, in OHMC 1920, we have quite a list of text that has been removed. And I kind of joke here by putting these in tiny, tiny text. But what we have essentially is lists of principal permit uses, lists of accessory permit uses, and lists of conditional uses. And each zone district has these lists in it. Sometimes it doesn't have all 3, it might just have 2. But each zone district will have lists in it, and those lists have been removed because they are now provided via the land use matrix. So finally, we move on to supporting definitions. And the reason that we had to go through and get some new definitions in there was to ensure that we weren't having a lot of different interpretations or kind of confusion with what some of these uses actually mean. And so we have provided a list of new definitions that reflect new land use items within the matrix. And we also have some revised language clarifying that existing wording that's in there, and those are pretty minor. So we have our recommended action there is to adopt Ordinance 1932, which accomplishes essentially 4 discrete items, and that is to create a new section 1921, which is standards for mixed-use development, creating a new Article 18 within 1920, which is the permitted land use matrix by zone district, creating and revising definitions within Section 1908, and then finally removing redundant language from 1920 that is superseded by the new land use matrix section. So that is the extent of my presentation this evening. As I did mention before, we do have a few public comments, but I will send it back to the mayor and let you guide the discussion.
Thank you, Ray. So at this time, I'd like to open the public hearing, and I know that we do have at least 3 comments that we have received from the public. Perhaps you could, we could look at those now, and then what we'll do is, when we close the public hearing, then we'll open it up for council at that point. So here are the comments from our public.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll just narrate a little bit here. At our previous Planning Commission and City Council meetings where we've discussed this, we did not have any comments from the public based on the typical noticing that we have for those meetings. More recently, what we did is we had a notification go out via social media. We garnered 3 comments from that, and those are included on that screen there.
So I'll ask Julie, our clerk, to make sure that we have no additional comments at this point from our public.
No, Mayor, we have just these 3 comments that we received via social media. Here are all of them. That was 1, and we have 3.
Oh, okay.
Mayor, that concludes the public comments we received.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Then at this point in time, we will close the public hearing and turn to the council for discussion or questions. I see Councilor Wiesner has his hand up. Start.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ray. Mostly, I mean, for all the hard work, but mostly for the matrix, right? I mean, what can we say, right? I mean, before going in, hey, can I do this in this zone? Okay, let's page to the page that tells us which page to page to, and then we'll look at one of the pages within those pages to see if could be a conditional use or an accessory use, or maybe it's on this page as a principal use, and you know, it was rough, right? And now, voila, and I know it took a lot of time to put that all together, and it's just goes to show the dedication of staff to take something that didn't have to be done, but it really did have to be done. It's going to make the user interface at the counter, on the website, every place so much easier. So thank you for that. I want to just kind of real quickly address the 3 public comments, because I think it's something we don't do real well sometimes, right? The public have a comment and we just kind of, you know, go on with our business. And just real quickly, you know, I just want to address that we're not looking to add residential or commercial. We already have that in our code. What we're looking to do is allow for it to be on a horizontal level rather than a vertical level, with a very clear defined path to that. And that's because, you know, it makes sense. You know, we're not a vertical town, We're not a town where a lot of buildings are heading up, and so it actually better suits our community. So, and then there was a comment obviously about roadways. There's traffic impact studies involved with all new development. That will continue. This is not a free for all to just go willy nilly. And regarding the comments about loans and stuff, I think a lot of this we're more looking at rental facilities and creating more spaces in our community for people to live. That I don't necessarily see this as being a big horizontal mixed use condo development where people would be going in and buying condominiums. I don't think that's really the intent of the ordinance. The intent of the ordinance is to make a vibrant downtown with some of the existing type of structure and infrastructure we have, and possible redevelopment in the future. But again, there's a whole series of steps that will protect that. So, for those people out there who made the comments, I appreciate that. And Ray, I appreciate the matrix so much, as well as all the hard work on the code and helping us understand it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Servadius.
Mr. Lindenberg, question. I'm looking in our packet at page, digitally it's 102, and I think it is section then, it flows over, it's 1921-050, number 3. You had talked about that 100-foot, and I appreciate you started out with we're not changing what's currently allowed or how that's necessarily done. Is this the section that you were referencing when you kept mentioning 100-foot setback for right-of-ways?
Yes, that is correct.
So I guess I just want to make sure, I appreciate that we're not changing what's currently allowed, but I want to make sure that if we're going to vote for something here, that we don't create an unintended consequence. Arterials right now, how would we classify Pioneer Way? You've got in here, you've got principal, minor, collectors. What is Pioneer Way considered?
It is not any of those. For the principal arterial is Highway 20. Your minor arterial, I believe, is Whidbey Avenue and Midway. It's on our map in our transportation plan. Pioneer Way, it does not apply to any of those categories. And the other caveat here is that the horizontal mixed use, when you look at the matrix, is only allowed in certain zone districts, and the CBD and CBD 1 and 2 are not in that category.
Okay, thank you, because I think that's where I'm heading. And the other two streets then I would ask is Midway and Bayshore. I'd have to believe Midway is an arterial. Is it classified minor or
I
collector?
believe that is correct, yes.
And so I'm just trying to, in my head, walk around. Specifically, I'm thinking Pioneer, SR20 and Pioneer East. There's several big plots of land there, and I realize that's CBD. Or if you go up Midway, looking at the land that's left in Oak Harbor, I don't want to create something where, especially if there's two streets somehow that it's a corner and you have 100-foot setback for perspective, because I know I put you on the spot before, SR20 Wingstop, that development that went in. What would be the setback from the curb to the frontage of Starbucks Wingstop, that building? Is that 100 feet?
It would be, yes. And the other thing is that when you have multiple street frontages, there are considerations for that as well. That particular parcel, you would have a 100-foot commercial reserve is what we're calling it. And so any residential, and the important thing to note here is that your commercial reserve area is either all commercial or commercial on the first floor and residential above, which is what we currently have. And so if, for instance, the project where Wingstop is had chosen to do residential, they could have done that under the old code, and they can do it also under this new code.
Okay, and I guess what I'm just, to make a finer point on it, I'm wondering if we, as a council, at some point need to take a look at that. If 100, I understand on Highway 20, busy streets, you probably need a little more room, but I think of other quaint downtowns where they do build quite tight, they'll go fairly minimal setbacks and then have the ability to go up. And without a lot of land here to work with, and we all know why that is, UGA, et cetera. I'm wondering if some of those setbacks might need to be taken. I mean, obviously we could approve this and still come back and change those, but just wondering if we were to wander around the town, look at land that's left that could be developed for these uses, if that setback is something that we need to take a good look at. So any strong thoughts there? And that's where I'll end.
Yeah, and to respond to that, I think, first of all, excellent thoughts and certainly things that we've considered. The concept here, to be perfectly honest, probably applies more to much larger parcels, not your 50 by 100 foot lots or even your 100 by 100 foot lots, but more along the lines of properties that we're measuring in multiples of acres. Because when I introduced this concept to you very early on back in the spring, I pointed out 3 parcels and 3 properties that the owners or developers had come to me and said, hey, what's the possibility of doing some sort of horizontal mixed use? One of those was the Pioneer Auto parcel, which goes all the way from Pioneer Way down to Windjammer Park. Another was a parcel on Goldie Road, and the third was a parcel behind Skagit Farmers on 8th, I believe, is it 8th or 6th. Those are all parcels that are much larger. And the thing is about them is when you look at this code, you know, it talks about having multiple buildings. And so if you're going to have multiple buildings, you're probably going to have a fairly significant parking lot. We're probably not going to build, 1,000 or 2,000 square foot commercial building and 2 or 3 units with this particular code. We're talking about building, a 10,000 square foot commercial building and an out parcel restaurant and 25, 50 residential units, things like that. This is more intended, for larger parcels, because the smaller parcels we're still thinking are probably going to be the stacked, vertical mixed use with a small commercial, coffee shop, retail store, and then a couple units above. So I think it works both ways. But I am definitely, all about flexibility. If this, somebody comes to us and says, hey, this is a great concept, but could we do, 50 feet instead? Maybe we look at doing a different concept or a minor change to it that allows that for areas like, Chimes Corner on Midway and things like that. So there's certainly, future changes could be made pretty easily.
All right, thank you. Well, those are the areas that, I was thinking of, and obviously I won't be here in 6 months to make those decisions, but I just want to make sure that we're thinking of some of those properties because we don't have a lot of land left to work with. So thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Councilor Goebel?
Thank you, Mayor. Ray, thank you for all that information. It's nice to have a matrix. I think it's a little more succinct and easier to understand what, the parameters and the boundaries are for all the different uses. So thank you for doing that for the development community. My question isn't, I don't think anything too, I just was thinking when you were talking about the expectation for landscaping of the developments, I was just curious, what is the expectation of maintaining the landscaping for some of those developments that, potentially are on roadways, the expectation for maintaining it, for the months and years to come?
Sure. The expectation is, first of all, we have, property maintenance requirements that are already written into our code. And so the landscape design, as I mentioned, is based on our existing code, the underlying zone districts in 1946. And the DRG, the Design Regulations and Guidelines. So the design of the landscaping is already baked in, and the maintenance of that landscaping is going to be probably one of those situations where it works itself out through market forces. That whoever owns this parcel of land is going to maintain this landscaping because it is in their own best interest. And if there are multiple owners of the land, if it's if it becomes a condo complex, then all of those multiple owners will have an HOA or an owners association, probably in this case, and there will be a reason that landscaping will be maintained, and that is to maintain the value of that property. So we're kind of leaning into the concept of market forces at work here. And then if in worst case scenario that doesn't work out for whatever reason, we do have the backup of having our property maintenance ordinance. You know, if we receive a complaint that there's weeds growing out there or that there's other violations of our code, or if they're in violation of the approved landscape plan or site plan, then we would follow up that direction. But I don't believe that will be an issue because of, you know, a property owner is most likely not going to allow that to happen. There might be a worst case scenario where something goes into bankruptcy or something along those lines. And, you know, unfortunately those things happen, and, you know, there's probably not a lot of ways that we can ensure that it doesn't happen, you know, without really getting into the weeds on controlling things.
Thank you. That definitely, I think it's good that there's some procedures in place in the event something like that happens. Are there any other comments? Oh.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Ray, what would Bay Shore be considered? What type of street?
Bay Shore, you're putting me on the spot. I believe it is a collector street. Oh, thank you. Yes, that is a minor arterial. But the issue is that Bay Shore is within the CBD zone district. So some of these things won't apply because horizontal mixed use is not a permitted use as shown in the matrix in the CBD. And most of Bay Shore, with the exception of that section that's over by the Wingstop, is within the central business district zone.
Okay, because I have seen through the years many ideas to go in from where Alfie's is all the way over to where the lumberyard used to be. And quite a few of them, Carlos doesn't, it's retail down and below. And you have Dr. Don's, which is down and below. But on the corner, there's like a law office on the bottom, but the top is apartments. And then where I think it was a Radio Shack way back when, it's windows, and sometimes you see a cat or you'll see, I don't know, it's not really open anymore, the downstairs, but you can tell it used to be retail, but someone lives above. But there's a nice sidewalk, I mean, really wide sidewalk and stuff behind them, but it doesn't have 100-foot, you know, space in front of it, and they have parking in back. And so if somebody, we've had different ideas to develop, and so, you know, you have that nice sidewalk that comes around and curves. If that area is going to have that 100-foot easement, you know, back, because you don't want to run commercial. Well, most of those commercial things that are already there are close to the sidewalk, but they have parking in back of them.
Right, and the key thing to keep in mind here is that when you look at your matrix, there's two separate land use categories, one for horizontal mixed use and one for vertical mixed use. And it will tell you which zone districts those are allowed in. And horizontal mixed use is not a permitted use in the central business district. So that Bay Shore property that you're talking about, the big empty property, will not be subject to the 100-foot requirements. And it will not be a situation where we'll have to say, well, you know, we have to have this 100-foot section and the area behind that set aside. It will still be allowed to have vertical mixed use. And the other key thing to keep in mind here is that in the central business district, the code says that that retail on the first floor, those active facades on the first floor, are for Pioneer Way specifically. If you have a frontage on a secondary street, whether it's Bay Shore or Fidalgo, one of those other streets, then the uses can change a little bit. And in fact, the major development that was proposed for that Bay Shore parcel included residential that was on the first floor. That's the one that happened back in 2006-07 range, but fizzled because of the economy at the time. And so that is kind of a separate issue. It's not allowed. It's the horizontal mixed use, and this concept that we're talking about tonight is not allowed in the central business district. So I don't believe that that will be an issue.
All right, my brain must not be working. So the businesses that are there, some are, they're two-story, and they're retail on both levels, or they're retail and living quarters up above. That's not allowed for the rest of that land. They can't have retail if they want to on the bottom. And living above, one project that fell through because the economy was, they were gonna have a gym and, I don't know, sandwich shop or something, and then they were going to have condos up above it and a parking garage with it. So that can't happen anymore on Bay Shore. It just has to be vertical. It can't be horizontal.
So okay, what's on Bay Shore right now is typically and was intended to be retail or commercial on the first floor. Like you mentioned, there's a doctor's office, there were retail shops, and then there's residential above. That's our quote unquote vertical mixed use. That is a permitted use in all of our commercial zone districts. It always has been. Nobody's really taken advantage of it outside the central business district, but it's always been available. The large project that I referenced that was approved, but never permitted, never followed through, back from 2006, had a vertical mixed-use component, but it did have residential on the first floor on the Bay Shore side, which was allowed by the code. But none of this is taking away the ability to do the retail and residential in the same building anywhere. It's just adding an additional option to do retail and residential in separate buildings in certain zone districts, not including the CBD.
Okay, that's good. And I like the matrix, so you're not looking all over and stuff. And it's probably not the time, but I'm really interested for the new development, remembering back to the fitness club and the condos and stuff. I can remember that we only required 1.5 parking space. And I'm thinking, if you have a 2 or 3 bedroom condo, whatever, you're gonna have 2 cars. And if they only have 1.5 space, they're gonna be parking on Bay Shore, taking up valuable parking that is used for our commercial. So when you get to the parking spots on how many is allowed, I definitely want to be in on that conversation, but this sounds great. Thank you for all your hard work. And we can tweak it if we need to as we go on, correct?
Yeah, I won't be insulted if you decide that we need a change. And the thing is also, just to touch really quickly on your parking, if it's a 2-bedroom or less, so a studio 1 or 2 bedroom requires 1.5. If you have 3 parking space or three bedrooms, you require 2 parking spaces. So that's the cutoff.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, any other questions? Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Seeing no other questions, I'd like to move to adopt ordinance number 1932, creating Oak Harbor Municipal Code, Section 1921, standard for mixed-use development, creating permitted land use matrix by zone district within Section 1920, creating and revising definitions within, removing redundant sections from 19.20, superseded by new land use matrix section.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, and I think it reads exactly like the recommended action in our packets. That motion was made by Councilor Wiesner and seconded by Councilor Goebel. Any other questions or input? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. So that, I see, passes unanimously, I believe. Thank you very much, Council. Okay, we will go on to our item B, 6B, which is ordinance number 1938, CBD zoning code. And we have our Associate Planner Ray again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. This is going to be a little bit of a backtrack from what we just talked about, so I apologize for that. But pretty much what we're looking at here, and I will share my screen real quick again, is this is going back to our previous review of the Central Business District zoning code and what happened in the past year, 2020, I should say, not the past year, because we're almost at the end of 2021 now. Essentially, that process went through, and we want to do some simplification and some cleanup on the Central Business District and fix some of the issues that we had that were based on a moratorium that was developed for the Central Business District, work on some community desires, permitted uses, dimensional standards, and those were all approved by the council January 5th of 2021, so very early this year. As we got into the year and looked at some of the ordinance language, we went through a process that somebody was possibly doing an application. We realized that there were some minor changes that didn't get made, and the intent of the changes that were approved on January 5th were achieved. The key points of concern for our development applications were adjusted. We didn't have a situation where we got an application in that was taking advantage of a loophole that didn't get fixed or anything like that. But all of the changes that we had intended to go with the code, for whatever reason, it's probably a staff error, did not get included in the code language that was approved on January 5th. And so we have some minor changes that we want to do. We want to make the final polish on that code that was changed pretty significantly back in January, and make some minor changes to it. And those are found also within your code. And I offer a mea culpa. I apologize. We made a mistake here, but we want to fix it and move on. But essentially, the changes are threefold. And number one among those is the removal of the word principal from principal permitted use references. As you saw in the previous presentation, we are moving away from the idea of having principal permitted uses and accessory permitted uses and conditional uses. We're just doing permitted uses and conditional uses now. Number two is a change in the minimum lot depth requirement from 25 to 50 feet. And again, that was something that we did, we showed in all of our presentations, but for whatever reason, instead of being 50 feet in that final code language, it was 25, probably a Scribner's error, but again, my mistake for not noticing that. The reason we wanted to do that was to prevent the inclusion of spite strips and other kind of changes to existing lots, either through boundary line adjustment or subdivision, that would make it so that somebody could develop kind of contrary to what we want to see in the downtown area. And then some housekeeping of outdated references. There was a mention of the design review board, which doesn't exist. So we are taking those and changing them. We're fixing them in this new draft ordinance that we have in front of you. And so our recommended action is to adopt Ordinance 1938 that fixes those errors that we had previously and have a fully corrected and functional Central Business District Code ready to go for 2022.
Thank you, Ray. So we have also the need to open and close a public meeting on this item. And I'd like to open that public meeting, open the public hearing at this point. I understand from Julie that there were no comments received.
That's correct, Mayor. We received no comments on this public hearing item.
Okay, and none tonight in question, so I will close the public hearing and turn to council for questions or input or motions. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Ray, I'm looking at the 117, and A is talking about the CBD building height may be increased to 45 feet if a ground floor active facade is developed in conjunction with a residential use. And then you say a CBD building height may be increased to 55 feet for non-residential uses or mixed projects by providing additional urban amenities. In a nutshell, can you kind of, why is one 45 and one can be 55?
It's an interesting case because we had this, we have this 35-foot height limitation. We have a design regulations and guidelines document that says that you have to do certain amenities and architectural standards within your development. And then we also have a requirement for the active facade, which used to be the retail space. And so the thing is about it is that, to be perfectly honest, this kind of harkens back to our original code. And it was, there were minor changes made to it. We were trying to polish it up. We're trying to fix some of the kind of inconsistencies to it. And so we have, your maximum building height is 35 feet, but the assumption is that if you're building on Pioneer Way, you have an active facade anyway. And so essentially at that point, you can go to 45 feet. And so this language is indicating a basic level of, or basic requirement for height, and then essentially giving bonuses beyond that. It might be a situation where you would have a building, say, that was in the interior of the block, where, for instance, you mentioned earlier the parking lots that are, kind of in between Pioneer and Bayshore. Say, for instance, somebody wanted to build something in there that didn't have any active facade because it was not adjacent to a street. I would think at that point we would probably want to limit that to 35 feet unless there was some sort of reason to allow it to be taller, because it's not really meeting what our intent is for the code. And so what it's trying to do is push people in a direction where we are getting essentially more bang for the buck and more of what we want to see as a city and our vision for Pioneer Way. And that is the active facade, and that is some of those increased urban amenities as defined in the DRG. And so it's kind of pushing in that direction. What we're saying is, look, you can have 35 feet, but if you do these things, we'll give you more. And the assumption, honestly, is that if you're developing a building in the central business district, most property owners are going to try and maximize their return on investment, so they're going to try and maximize the height. And so what we're asking for them to do is give us something in return, and that is increased design standards and making sure that we have that active facade.
Okay, I remember being on Planning Commission a long time ago, and they used to take the property and go from the corners to the center, and then that would be your height that they would measure on if you got 45 feet or 55 feet. Are they still doing that? Because some of that property slopes, has a slant to it and stuff, so they were trying to figure out how to figure out what the point that they're measuring from for the height of those buildings.
Yeah, and if you remember back, gosh, I think it was last year in 2020, we made some minor changes to the code. One of them, it might have been 2019. One of them was to change how we measure building height. And the way that you probably are remembering having done it in the Planning Commission was we measured from the corners of the parcel. And that was creating all sorts of issues for us because, for instance, the Park Terrace apartments out on Fort Nugent, we were having to measure their building height based on that huge parcel of land, and it's quite a hill. And so that was a difficult thing. So we changed the code to make it so that your maximum building height or your building height calculation is based on the corners of the building itself, not the parcel. And so I think in answer to your question, it makes it a lot more easy to figure out, and I don't believe that it causes any unintended consequences as far as height is concerned, because we are still measuring a building, not necessarily a parcel.
So in a nutshell, this makes it all more flexible, which is what we were looking for and which Main Street was looking for also. Is this correct
Yes.
or not? All right, thank you.
Any other input or questions? Motions? Councilor Goble?
Seeing no other comments, I move to adopt ordinance number 1938, amending Oak Harbor Municipal Code sections 1920-315, 1920-320, 1920-325, Central Business District.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Motion reads exactly like the recommended action in our packet. Motion made by Councilor Goble, second by Mayor Pro Tem Munns. Any other input or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. And that's unanimous here. Is that a hand raised, Mr. Weezer? Yeah, okay. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate your time and hard work on these.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 7A at this point. Resolution 21-29, non-represented employees, 2021-2022 cost of living adjustment, COLA, health insurance cost share adjustment, and addition of observed holiday. And we will turn to our HR manager, Emma House. Emma?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I am here tonight from Human Resources to present Resolution 2129, Non-Represented Employees 2021-22 Cost of Living Adjustment, Health Insurance Cost Share Adjustment, and the addition of an observed holiday. Let me, move this for a second. Okay, so to give a little bit of background summary, in the Oak Harbor Municipal Code 2.34.080 under compensation, it is the policy of the City of Oak Harbor to pay adequate levels of compensation to city employees. Providing adequate compensation to city employees promotes productivity, reduces turnover, and improves the city's ability to attract and retain qualified personnel to carry out the functions of city government. You may recall that during October 2020, we presented Resolution 2025, which was approved by City Council, that authorized the retroactive cost of living adjustment for non-represented employees for the calendar year of 2021. The main goal of the resolution was to make sure that we were taking into consideration our negotiations with our bargaining unit members and to make sure that anything that was agreed upon for increases was comparable to what we would also want to offer to our non-represented employees. So in summary, the resolution is going to do 4 different things. The resolution is to address the retroactive COLA for 2021 to be 2% effective January 1st of 2021. And then to also authorize a 2% COLA effective January 1st of 2022. To adjust the health insurance premium cost share, and this is specific for the dependent family coverage. Currently, it is a 75% cost share and 25% cost share, so 75% from the employer, 25% from the employee. And the adjustment will be to go to 80%, 20%. And the last item is the addition of a holiday in recognition of Juneteenth, which will become effective in 2022 moving forward from that point. In summary, the fiscal impact for these changes is listed here for 2021, the 2% increase. For 2022, you can see the compounded effect, the total impact for the 2 years. And then also down below, we have noted the impact for the cost share of medical. And this is for all of the employees, including the non-represented. So at this time, I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Emma. Before we do that, I want to check with Clerk Julie to make sure that we received any kind of comment from our public.
Thank you, Mayor. No, we received no comments from the public on this item.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Then we'll turn to council for input or questions. Mayor Pro Tem.
I want to share with the non-representative group that it's taken a while to get through the police, and we still have Teamsters and the fire to go. And I thank you for your patience. It wasn't that HR or council or staff was ignoring you. It just, time moves very slowly, I find, in government. And it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. So I am glad we finally have this to vote on. If there's no other questions, I'll make the motion. All right. I recommend that we approve Resolution 21-29 as presented in accordance with having met the terms and conditions of Resolution number 20-25 as approved by Council on October 6, 2020.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second, and the motion reads exactly like the recommended action in our packet. That motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Munns, and the second was by Councilor Koval. Seeing no other input or questions, all in favor signify by raising your right hand, raising your hand. And that includes, that passes unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Emma, for your work on that.
Thank you all.
So we will now turn to, I believe, our last item on our agenda, which is item number 8A, agreement between the Opportunity Council and the City of Oak Harbor for low-income utility payment assistance. And for this evening, we have our Finance Director, Mr. David Goldman. Dave?
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council, David Goldman, Finance Director. This item is for an agreement with the Opportunity Council to help assist our utility billing customers with the utility bills. So per Resolution 2126, the City Council instructed the Finance Department to help direct utility customers who are behind on their bills to outside agencies to obtain financial assistance. We've been working with the Opportunity Council since 2020, and a number of our customers have received help from them. The aim of this interlocal agreement with the Opportunity Council furthers this goal by offering assistance to households that earn less than 150% of the federal poverty level by family size. Interested customers would contact the Opportunity Council, and if they're approved, the Opportunity Council would notify the customer of the benefit amount and then send the funds directly to the city. With that, I have a suggested motion on the screen, which reads the same as in the packet. And with that, I also open the floor for questions or clarifications.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goldman. Before we turn to council, I want to verify that we've not gotten anything from our public regarding this. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. We received no comments from the public on this item.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Okay, turn to council for questions or?
Any comments? No? Okay. Well, I have a comment. I think this is great, and I'm really happy to see this on here. I think a lot of people are struggling with the utility bill, so I'm really happy that we're helping those who truly need the assistance. With that, oh, Jim, never mind.
Councilor Weezer?
Well, it sounds like Councilman Gold was heading where I was. This is a no-brainer to help out the people. Our city, I'd be happy to make the motion to authorize the mayor to sign the low-income home water and wastewater assistance program vendor agreement with the Opportunity Council.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Motion reads exactly like the recommended action. That motion was made by Councilor Weezer. And seconded by Councilor Gold. All in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. And that passes unanimously. So thank you very much for that
Thank you.
work. And I totally agree that it's so nice to have that help and opportunity for those in our community that need it. Thank you. So So we'll move then to other items. And if there